and gentlemen, boys and girls, one and all, to the 2025 debut episode of the Quinn Spinn. I'm your host, Quinn. At least that's how I'm known here on the program and literally nowhere else. But I'm back here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and more for the first rousing and riveting installment of the new year of the official podcast of Underground Music Collective. You just heard Revel 9's All Become at the top of the show. That has been our opening theme song here at the Quinn Spinn since the great year of 2014, and it will be throughout 2025 and until the end of days. And we've got a very exciting episode today, coming in hot with this one from beatBread, Matthew Tilley. He's going to tell you all about this beatBread platform and how it provides funding to independent artists without a major label. We break down how it works, we break down the philosophy behind it, and how it helps independent artists build more equitable and sustainable careers. Wanted to start the year with this one to set the tone for the year to come. All right, everybody, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the intro, I have the honor and privilege of helping you as artists figure out how to get funding for your artist projects in a way that's more conducive to where you are on your artistic journey. And to do that, I welcome Matthew Tilley, who is with beatBread, and he's going to tell me all about what they're doing to help fund artists and their platforms as they continue to grow. But first, Matthew, thank you so much for joining.
Of course. I'm very happy to be here, Gerald. I'm never shy of hearing the sound of my own voice. So hopefully it's interesting and useful for your listeners, viewers, whatever they are.
Yeah, I think it will be, no matter the medium by which they are digesting the show. I think they're really going to get a lot out of this. And certainly I will as well, just being on the industry side, in our first conversation, I was really blown away by what beatBread is capable of, really, the potential to change the game here for independent artists who, are always trying to answer that funding question. And so I thought this was a really important conversation for us to have and document and share out. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of what beatBread is and how it accomplishes this, I want to ask you the three standard questions. Feel free to answer these however you want. Have fun with them. They are: who are you? What are your passions? And why on earth would you want to come on the Quinn Spinn?
Okay, so my name's Matthew Tilley. I'm English, you can probably tell that. I moved to the US, specifically New York City, about 24 years ago. I know I definitely don't look old enough, right? But that was that's how I've ended up here. That's basically, I'm married. I have a 20-year-old son who's at college in Madrid in Spain. I'm actually going to see him next week. We're going to see Sum 41 together. Band I used to work with, so that'll be a fun little outing. That's me. One of my passions is, sadly, or for better or for worse, really only one: music. I like movies, I like traveling, I like food, I like lots of other things, but really music's always just been my total passion, with zero talent for it, by the way. I was the only kid in my class who wasn't put in the school choir. Failed the test of any ability to hold a tune, couldn't hold a tune in a bucket. But just love all kinds of music, and how it can make you feel and how it makes people react. And why do I want to come on this podcast? Well, because we're growing this company and we have a passion to help artists, and I don't want to sound too evangelical, but the music business has been a pretty shitty place for artists. But am I allowed to say that?
Sorry, yeah, absolutely. This is the internet. You can say whatever you want.
Okay, fine. And it hasn't been the greatest place for artists for the last 50, 100, whatever it is, years. And we are actually trying to make the world for artists a slightly better place. We're trying to build a business and make money at the same time, but we think we can have like a win-win situation where we can have a great business and artists can benefit from that as well.
Absolutely. And we here at Underground Music Collective and the Quinn Spinn and whatever other thing that we have within our umbrella are all about the rising tide raising all boats and creating a more fair and equitable industry that allows the artists control over their careers, futures, and lives, right? And to your point, for pretty much as long as there's been a music industry, there hasn't really been that consideration for like, okay, how are we giving the creators the power within, the traditional industry? It's often everybody but the creator, but the music, the person making the music, the musician, the artist is, in control and in power of the dynamic, right? So I'm very excited about this platform. And before we really dive into the nuts and bolts of it, I want to give you an opportunity to go further in your passions. Of course, you've been a lifelong just fan advocate of music. How did that appreciation for the art lead you to being a part of this solution to help artists?
Yeah, so I was trying to give you a simple version of this. I ended up in what we would call secondary school in the UK, which most people start when they're 11. I started when I was 10 for
Hmm.
various reasons that I won't bore you with. And so when it came time to like choose a degree and what do you want to do in life and all that stuff, I was still only, I think 16 when most of my friends were 17. And I don't know if a year makes that much of a difference, but I had no clue what I wanted to do, right? Um, Ended up doing a business studies degree. Ended up from that going into a job which they'd given me some intern work, and I won't even bore you with what it was, but it was the like least sexy job you can possibly imagine. And I remember looking around one day and thinking, looking at the people who I thought were old at the time, who were probably 40, right? It's hilarious to me now. But looking around and thinking, wow, if I'm still here when I'm 40, I will probably want to hang myself. Don't exaggerate. But it was just like, and then I sort of had this moment of like, I need to do something I'm passionate about. And
Hmm.
I read a couple of books. And by the way, if any of your listeners are thinking about changing jobs or looking for a job, I would highly recommend a book called What Color Is Your Parachute?
Hmm.
Go look it up, guys. It's life changing for me. Anyway, um, and it was literally like, what are you good at and what are your passions? And I knew I was relatively good at business. My dad had his own business. My grandfather had his own business. Again, nothing to do with music. And I knew I loved music. And then it was literally like I went, well, I wonder if there's a thing called the music business, like
Hmm.
light bulb, duh. And there was the music business, and I soon figured out, what it was and how it worked and all that. And just by chance, um, a friend that was like one of those friend of a friend of a friend was an auditor working at a record label in London. And he gave me the name of somebody in human resources, and I wrote her a letter, and she asked me in, and she thought I was his cousin for some reasons, was like doing me a favor, and but obviously saw the passion, right, and was like, I'm going to find you something to do. And they gave me a job as like an assistant covering for somebody who was out on maternity leave, I think it was. But like, I got a job for 3 months. And I was like, right, I'm in. That's it. I'm not
Hmm.
leaving. And I just made it my business to like annoy everybody in the building and go around and ask questions and just like be in there. There was a company called Polygram. It doesn't exist
Hmm.
anymore. Got bought by Universal Music, but it was at Polygram in London in 1996, I think. Um, yeah, and so it turns out that when you have a passion for something and you apply yourself to it, and some luck and some timing and all that stuff, but worked out. And, kept moving up, and then got asked by Universal to move to New York in the year 2000 and worked at Island Def Jam for a bunch of years. I was doing international marketing for artists like Bon Jovi and The Killers and Sum 41 and Hoobastank, if you remember them.
Hmm.
Melissa,
Hmm.
Melissa Etheridge for some of our older listeners. Um, yeah, and then moved from there to EMI, where I worked with Katy Perry and Nora Jones and 30 Seconds to Mars and Lady Antebellum. For your Nashville listeners, were a band that came out of Nashville, but I managed to convince the rest of the world that, well, they're not really a country act. They're more like Fleetwood Mac or The Cause or something.
Yeah.
Um, and
Mhm.
and that worked as well. And then various other things, and ended up back at Universal, where I met my boss, the guy who hired me back into Universal, was the guy who ended up founding beatBread. So I'm sort of going to stop there because it's a long and rambling story already. But yes,
Mhm.
music, passion, business, record labels, beatBread. That's
Yeah.
the
You mentioned Bon Jovi and the Killers, and yeah, back then, in the 2000s, I was one of the people you were marketing to. That's around the time they both became among my favorite bands. So, 2000 with Crush for Bon Jovi, and then the Killers, of course, came out a little later, with Hot Fuss in 2004. But
yep,
that's crazy to see, like, little high school me listening to these bands, and then like all of a sudden I meet the guy who's working with them. So it's like,
right. Well, I'll also tell you, it was my friend Rob who signed the Killers. I remember Rob asking me into his office and playing me. I think probably somebody told me a Mr. Brightside, and me going, "Yeah, it's okay." Oh dear, I'm glad I'm not an A&R person. I was like, yeah, yeah, we could probably sell a few, like, especially in the UK, they'll probably think they're cool. right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, it turned out to be one of the biggest bands in the world. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
fun
still
story.
out there crushing it too. I mean, I'm overdue to go see them again. It's been since 2013, since Battleborn, so I'm well overdue. But anyway, back to
Yep.
beatBread. Back to beatBread. So what's amazing about this is, I mean, a lot of things are amazing about this, but it's providing artists access to funding while also allowing them full creative control. So they get to decide who they work with on the marketing end, on the management end, and essentially it's a platform to help them find and uncover and use the resources that they need to build their teams, to build their platforms, to market, to grow, right? So take us through a little bit about how this works and how artists can get tapped in.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you what we're not first, right? So we're not a label, we're
Mhm.
not a distributor, and we actually don't offer any services beyond funding. So now I'm going to take a little diversion to talk about kind of the old music business, right? A traditional record deal, you go back, way back when. Well, sorry, let me go back even further. Why did record companies exist, and why was it important to get signed to one? Well, it was important to get signed to a record label because there was really pretty much two things that controlled whether you were successful or not. To be successful or not 20, 30, 40 years ago, you had to have a record on the radio, and you had to have your CD or tape or cassette or vinyl or whatever it was in the stores, right? And the record labels pretty much had a stranglehold on the radio stations because they had the relationships, and the retail because again they knew the person at Target and Walmart and Tower Records it was back then, and Sam Goody or whatever, all these places that don't exist anymore. But that
Ooh,
was, you had to have those two things.
FYE, don't forget FYE.
FYE, yes, exactly. So streaming changed all that. Streaming says you can get directly to the consumer, right? There is no, you don't have to be on the radio anymore to be heard, and you don't have to be in the stores to be consumed. The Spotify does all that, and obviously other streaming platforms are available, right? But Spotify does all that. So then what the record deal was a bundle essentially of distribution, whether you call that physical distribution of putting physical product in the stores or getting the product up on streaming services, the services that you need, so marketing, PR, digital, all that stuff, and the funding that you need to pay for all that stuff, right? It was a bundle of those three things. And it made sense at the time because a record label was the only way to get to the success. It made sense to take that bundle of services, right? We think that most artists, not all of them, because some artists sign to major labels and are very happy there. If you think of, Ariana Grande or Drake or The Weeknd, I can't imagine they're unhappy with the service that Universal Music has provided for them, right? It's made them into
Right.
the biggest artists in the world. Incredible. But there are lots of artists who sign to labels and actually get very frustrated because they don't get the success, right? Or they feel like they get pushed down a path that wasn't them creatively, or they get made to work with people that they don't feel understand their vision, all of those things. And that's because they're taking that bundle of distribution, services, and funding all bundled together. Now, the sort of thesis behind beatBread is you're likely to be potentially more successful, probably make more money, and certainly be happier if you make those three decisions separately, right? So choose the best distributor for you. And I'm sure lots of your listeners are using DistroKid or TuneCore or
Mhm.
Too Lost or whoever that is, right? Independent DIY distributor, you just say is just literally a means of getting this song I just made onto the streaming services. Don't need anything else from them. That's fantastic. Then go pick the best marketing partners for you. Who's a PR person that really gets what you're trying to do, right? Who's a digital marketing person who totally understands you? Who's a playlist company? Who's a radio promotions company? Whatever those things are, but pick those people because they're the people you want. And not only that, they're the people that you're specifically paying to do this job, and they know they can get fired if they don't do the job well, right? That's the other thing. When your team at a record label are very unlikely to get fired if they don't do a good job for you specifically. They don't do a good job for all the artists on the label. Yeah, they're probably not going to keep the job for very long, right? But if they don't do what you wanted to achieve, they're not going to lose their job, right?
Right.
And then the third piece is the funding piece, right? That used to come all bundled together. And the label's like, well, we're going to sign you and we're going to give you $500,000, which of course you have to recoup, right?
Mhm.
It's never a gift. But you've taken the bundle of those three things together. And we think if you actually separate those choices out and make those choices separately, you're likely to have a better outcome. Even as simple as, you some people can get an advance from the distributor. Now, what happens when you take an advance from the distributor is you're tied to that distributor until you've recouped the advance. And if you decide that distributor is not actually very good, or they're not providing the services they promised you, you're stuck there if you took money from them, right? If you took money independently, then the power stays in your hands. And then just to sort of talk about the bigger implication of it, you sign a record deal, the record company owns the music you made forever. That is the typical record deal, right? The music that you made, that you crafted, that it was your baby, that you put your heart and soul into, they own that music for the rest of time. Not only that, a typical record deal, and this is on majors, indie deals tend to be a lot better than this, but on a major record label, your royalty rate will probably be at 18 or 19 or 20%, which means that, you know, if you're lucky enough to sell a CD for $10, you'll make $1.80 at best, and the record company is making the rest of it, right? So now when you own your own music, if you're on a distributor that charges 0%, which, you know, DistroKid I think charges $2.99 a month or whatever it is, you whatever money comes in, 100% of it's going to you. So felt like a very long answer to a short question, but well, that's sort of that's so the idea of beatBread is keeping ownership of your music. That's really important. Keeping creative control, because the money didn't come with, well, we'll give you money, but you have to listen to us on how are you going to do it, right? So it's maintaining ownership, maintaining control.
Which I love that, because as a coach, as a consultant too, like I'm always telling artists, you know, and consulting them to create from a place that's truly them, create from this authentic place, this place from within, right? Getting aligned with their values, their mission, their vision. And to your point, if you're taking this funding from a record label, then they call the shots. They call the shots as far as who you need to work with, what it needs to be, what it needs to sound like, what it needs to look like. And that is where a lot of artists, not all, but many, get frustrated and burnt out, and eventually, leave their deals, or they don't re-sign, or they just kind of call it quits, right? And get frustrated and burn out to the point where they don't want to do it anymore. So this allows you as the artist to work with who you want to work with, create what you want to create, but have a mechanism to fund that. And so I want to get into exactly how it works. So as far as where the funding comes from, right, from beatBread. So take us through that process and how the artist can procure that funding.
Yeah, so we have a website. It's pretty much self-service. There's always got a whole team here. This is what we have offices in LA, in St. George, Utah, where all our tech people sit, and here in New York City. There's always people to help, but you can also just go through the process on your own on the website. The minimum qualification is you need to have had, a few songs, call it 3-4 songs, that have been out for at least 6 months, and you need to be making at least, it's around $100 a month in streaming income, right? Which generally, if some people are all on Apple Music, but if you're on Spotify, that's your main source of streaming, about 10,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, right? And the reason for that, 10,000 monthly listeners on Spotify means you're making about $100 a month. That means there's something for our algorithm to, and it is all based on data science, right? But it's something for it to get stuck into. Neither we nor the systems we use listen to the music, right? There's no objective judgment about whether music is good or bad. We look at data, and we look at a lot of data. We've got 200,000 artists in our system. We've got 20 million tracks, and we've got over 2 billion data points, right? So the system will pull data from Luminate, which is the company that keeps score for the charts. It'll pull data from Chartmetric. And if your listeners don't know about Chartmetric, go check it out. It's a really useful tool to look at your growth and trajectories and all of those kinds of things. It'll pull data from Spotify, it'll pull data from a bunch of places. And the algorithm is looking at all these different data points to allow it to predict for each individual track by an artist how that track is going to perform over the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 20 years in some cases. And so we're sort of looking at a song and saying, what is this song going to earn over the next however many years? And therefore, what can we give you today? Say give, that's a really bad word. What can we advance is the correct word. We're advancing income, right? What is the advance we can make today based on the prediction of how this music's going to perform over the next X or Y years?
Mm-hmm.
And so the website, beatBread.com, will allow you to see estimates of what you can get in less than a minute. You just give us a bit of information. And then ultimately, if you're interested in taking a deal, we're going to ask you to upload your distribution reports. Those are really easily downloadable on DistroKid, for example. You click on the wallet and then you click the button that says see excruciating detail. That's the report we need to see. You're going to drag and drop those reports on the website, upload them. It's going to take us a couple of days. And then we're going to come back to you with confirmed offers. And we really try and give the artist a lot of choice at that point. Choice number one, do they just want an advance against their catalog, meaning tracks that are already out, or do they want potentially to get money against their next 5 songs or the next 10 songs or more than that, right? How long do they want this deal to last? Do they want to take a 1-year deal, a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal, a 5-year deal, right? All these things affect the amount of money they can get, but it's putting the control in their hands. Do they need to keep a percentage of their income each month? If you're making $2,000 a month, but you need $1,000 a month to pay your rent, then we'll say to you, okay, keep 50% of your income every month. Again, of course, your advance is going to be lower if you keep some of the income. But the point is we give you as much choice as we can to allow you to design your own deal to get something that makes sense for you.
Mm-hmm. And that autonomy, hugely important, especially with a lot of independent artists, relying on income from multiple streams, whether that's the streaming revenue, whether that's merchant touring, whether that's a day job, side hustle. Like we all
Right.
have so many things going on, within this industry trying to make the dream work. So to have that flexibility and that autonomy to choose where, you don't have somebody saying this is the deal, take it or leave it is so, so, so important, for the artist. And then of course they get to choose how they use that advance to invest in themselves, invest in their platform, invest in the
Right.
team if they've got a team, right?
Right.
So is there anything that you've seen, as far as that investment choice, that the artist makes that has really worked for some artists? So like, is there anywhere in particular, like say they get the advance and then they choose like, I'm going to invest in this, I'm going to invest in that? Or is it kind of like a case by case basis based on where they are in their career as far as the best place to start using that investment?
So I'll sort of give you two separate answers, Gerald. The first is we don't tell the artist in any way where to spend the money.
Mm-hmm.
And in the nicest possible way, we don't care, right? What I'm saying is we advance the money and then we kind of leave them alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not calling you like, oh, where did you spend the money? Did it work? Didn't it work? Like what's going on? Of course, we track their streams and we report to
Mm-hmm.
them every month how their recoupment is going. But now, on the reverse side, what have we seen people spend the money on? We've seen people buy out of bad deals. We've seen people. One guy moved to Nashville, funnily enough, with the money he got. We've seen people go on tour. We've seen people, invest in marketing campaigns. I would say there are more and more DIY tools to allow you to build your own marketing campaign. Symphony OS is one that springs to mind off the top of my head, and
Mm-hmm.
Catapult is another one. There's one that might pop into my head in a second, but I would say, the internet's where it's at, right? And I already probably sound old saying the internet, but like social media, TikTok, Instagram, all those places. And there are now tools online where you can go, and I think for as little as $100 in many cases, start a little advertising campaign. And it will advise you where to spend the money, how to spend the money. It'll help you create clips. It'll do all that stuff. So, like I say, we don't do that. We don't do those services. We don't officially recommend any at the moment, although we're hoping to build a recommendation engine that will help people, choose services that work for them. But those types of platforms seem to me to be the smartest place to start, right? If you're building your career. Now, if you're a mid-sized artist and you want to get much bigger, you might need to go hire a PR person. You might need to go hire a radio plugger. You might need to go hire, a streaming playlist consultant. There's all sorts of things where you can start spending a lot more money. But in the beginning, those like Symphony OS and Catapult type platforms where you can build your own campaign online seems to be a pretty good place to start.
Mm-hmm. But artists, the power is in your hands, and that is a beautiful answer because literally, you can use this to advance your career, advance your platform in any way that you see necessary. That's going to be a wise investment. So it's an amazing tool that we have at our disposal. This is what we've been waiting for here in the industry, is for the creators to have the power and the autonomy. And you're doing great work over there at beatBread. Another question I have for you is, Where do you see tools like beatBread fitting into the overall musical ecosystem over the next decade or so? Of course, things are rapidly evolving with technology. New tools are, coming to the forefront to give creators the power. Where do you see beatBread's role fitting into that larger music ecosystem?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I'll give you a stat that we discovered when we started about 4 years ago, right? And we've made nearly 1,300 advances at this point. So we've done this a lot. But one of the stats we saw when we were starting the company is if you think of a universe of artists who are making $50,000 a year or more from recorded music, right? Not from merch, not from touring, but they're making $50,000 a year or more from recorded music. The stat we saw was that in, I think, 2018, there were about 10,000 of those worldwide. By 2022, there were 25,000 of those. And by 2030, there's forecast to be 50,000. Obviously, between 50 and 60,000 artists making $50,000 a year or more from recorded music, right? That's a massive, massive, what I'd call middle class of artists, right? Making, now in most cities in the world, $50,000 a year is a living, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Not in New York, it's not.
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
so you've gone from, you'll in about 15 years or less, you'll have gone from 10,000 artists making a living from music. And by the way, some of them making much, much more. I forget the Spotify stats they published earlier this year, but it was the number of artists who are making $1 million a year or more from Spotify. And that number just keeps going up every year, right? So a lot, there isn't the capacity of record labels to sign all those people and to promote all those people. So there's going to be the DIY middle class of artists is just going to be getting bigger and bigger. And hopefully at beatBread, we're not only going to provide them funding, but like I said, we would want to be a sort of platform that recommends distributors, recommends services, recommends producers. And it's all going to be based on data science. But that's the goal, is to build out our capabilities so that the data tells us, let's say you're an Americana artist about to make your third album. We hope we'll have some data that says, here are the top 3 producers that we've seen from data make a difference to an artist's career, an artist in this genre at this stage of their career. This is a producer who can actually make a difference. So we will never offer services ourselves because we just know that's not our skill set. And it also hampers your ability to scale, right? When you offer services, then you're having dialogue with artists, and then there's absolutely a place for that. It's really important, but that's not what our goal is. Our goal is to be this sort of central source of not only funding that anybody will come and look at our funding options. We're also developing a tool, by the way, to allow you to compare our deals with other deals from outside, and we will be more than happy, whatever percentage of the time that is. I hope it's definitely less than half, but let's say 40% of the time we say, oh yeah, that deal you've been offered by X is actually better than our deal. You should go take that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, a real, a platform, a place for artists to come to get money, to get information, to get advice, to get recommendations. That's where we hope we're going to be.
Amazing. Amazing. Always keeping the artist at the core of everything at beatBread. So one more question I have for you, because of course, with new technology, new tools, there always is that segment of the population who might be a little hesitant, who might, be a little leery of maybe taking it advance, right? What would you say to anybody who has any like hesitation or questions as to whether this is the right solution for them?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing that I always say and enjoy saying is, if you don't need the money, please do not take an advance from us, right? Now, you have to define need. But I love it. The best conversations we have are where an artist says, I've written a plan for the next year and I need $28,000 to execute it. Now, what the amount they say they need is not influencing us, right? The algorithm is going to produce what it's going to produce. But I just love the fact that this person has an idea of what they want to achieve, and they've written down the things that they need to achieve it. I need to get a new laptop. I need to do a photo session. I need to hire a PR person. I need to make a video. I need to play 3 shows, and whatever those things are, but they've kind of listed it out. So I would just say, what are you trying to achieve? And will this money help you get there? And if it will, then great. Look at the options, and always to me, think about what is the lowest advance I can take. Right, our business works the more money we put out, so we would like people to take high advances as a business, but as human beings, we would like people to take the smallest advance that they need, because we don't want to advance people. Money costs money, right? Taking money from beatBread has a cost to it. It's a recoupment rate. It depends on the length of the deal. It depends on the risk that the algorithm sees. It depends on all these things, right? But the money costs money. So you are giving up something when you take money from us. So the decision you have to make is, do I have enough good use for this money that I think it's going to be the gasoline on my fire? That means that the investment will definitely be worthwhile, right? It's sort of like, I don't know if you know about, and I'm not an expert, but discovery mode in Spotify essentially says, I'm going to take a lower rate, a lower streaming rate, a lower income on my songs, because I know the algorithm is going to promote them. And I believe that the boost in streams I'll get will offset the reduction in rate per stream that I've taken, right? That's essentially the decision you're making with Spotify discovery mode. And you should be making kind of the same decision with beatBread, right? I'm going to take a $10,000 advance or a $50,000 advance or a $100,000 advance, whatever that number is. And I know I'm giving up a portion of that money to beatBread. beatBread doesn't give out money for free, right? But I believe that if I take that money and invest it, my streams are going to go up, and that's going to compensate for the money, the portion of my income that beatBread's taken. So it's a business decision, guys, and treat it like a business. And I do worry sometimes when I see youngish, not kids, but young adults taking chunky 6-figure, 7-figure advances from us, and thinking, I hope they got good advice, or I hope they got a good head on their shoulders. Now, most of the time, I think if they got to the place where they're worth that much money, they're probably pretty good. They probably know what they're doing, right? But taking the money so you can put a picture on Instagram with a brick of bills, or you can go buy some jewelry or buy a car.
Right. Yeah.
It's up to you. But I would say, have a plan, know what you need, don't take more than you need. And if you're hesitant, take a 1-year deal from us, right? Take whatever the number is you can get on a 1-year advance. Our algorithm's only going to advance you what we think you can earn back in a year. So we're 95% certain that deal will be over in a year. So you took an advance, you invested some of the money, you didn't give up the ownership of your music, you sold the income to us for a year. And the end of the year, it's over. And if you didn't like it and it wasn't worth it, well, you go back to how things were before. On the other hand, you can, come back and do another deal if it made sense. So if you're not sure, stick to a short-term deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that point too. Make sure, as an artist, when you're taking an advance, when you're taking any money, like that, you have a plan for that money. You have a plan to get that return on investment, that you're investing it responsibly, and not using it, like you said, to flex on Instagram or make it look like you made it. Like, it is a business decision. It's funding to fund your creative business, and should be treated as such. So I love that you made that point. I love that, the company is conscious of that as well. Again, very artist centric, very much like with the creative in mind, and how this is going to help them grow and have a chance to advance their career without having to sign everything away. So you're doing amazing work there at beatBread, Matthew. And just a couple more questions. First of all, thank you again for coming on and telling us more about this. If people want to learn more, where can they go online and explore this?
Beatbread.com is a great place. There's an FAQ there. There's what do we call it? The resource center. There's a bunch of information there. Our Instagram at beatBread. Our YouTube channel has a bunch of artist videos, artists talking about working with beatBread, and some stuff that we've shot with artists. People telling about their experience. So yeah, I think those are the main three. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Threads, I think we're on Facebook probably. Does anybody go there anymore? I don't know. But but beatbread.com and Instagram and YouTube, I'd say, are the places you'll find a bunch of stuff.
So go on, learn more. And thank you again, Matthew, for coming on. Really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing how everything develops with beatBread and how it continues to help artists find everything they need, funding and resources to grow independently. It's amazing work again, and just want to thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. Nice to chat. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely. I'll be back to wrap it up in just a moment. All right, so there you have it. I want to thank Matthew Tilley from beatBread for coming on, sharing all about this revolutionary platform that helps you, the independent artist, find funding without a major label deal. Revolutionary shift happening in the industry right now throughout 2025 and beyond, and we are here for it, folks. And you are here for the Quinn Spin. 2 N's and Quinn, 2 N's and Spin. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and more. Also on your socials, Instagram and Threads, of course, at Quinn Spin Official. Facebook is still the Quinn Spin. TikTok is about to not exist anymore, apparently. Who knew? UMCNashville.com, our central hub for all things independent music, creativity, community, and more at Underground Music Collective. Of course, you can follow us on Facebook and now Instagram at UMC Worldwide, because Meta decided to delete our Instagram when we got to 5,000 followers for no reason. Still upset about that, but we're going to get through it like we always do here at UMC. Also, you can find us, again, at UMCNashville.com. Plenty to come. We've got brand camp going on right now at UMC Academy. Follow UMC Academy on Instagram as well for all the updates there from the educational realm of Underground Music Collective. We've also got another workshop coming up here, a branding workshop called Building Your Authentic Artist Brand, right at Helping Our Music Evolve, right over on that stage over there, February 27th, 6 to 8 p.m. in Nashville. And of course, your boy's going to be at South by Southwest, March 12th, 10 to 12, presenting a similar workshop. Also, my book, 60 Plus Lessons from the Creative Journey, a handy guide for the budding entrepreneur, releases on Amazon February 25th. Pre-order it now. I think that's it. Revel 9's all become. Going to take us out like it brought us in. Grab some muffins on your way out.